abyssal serenity cut through the indigo waters of the Atlantic, a vessel with a destiny entwined with the phantasmal realms. Professor Jonathan Wainwright, a man of letters and logic, sought solace in the rhythmic cadence of the ship's engines. His decision to embark on this transoceanic journey during the throes of recovery from surgery was a quest for respite, a respite that would prove elusive in the encroaching shadows. The voyage, initially serene, took a disconcerting turn when Professor Wainwright learned of an unusual companion destined for the same European shores. Whispers among the crew conveyed a tale of death, of a soulless passenger carried in a casket, a harbinger of disquiet in the hollows of the ship. The fog emerged as an insidious character, weaving tendrils of uncertainty around the abyssal serenity. Icebergs loomed in the mist like dormant titans, their frozen forms casting an eerie pallor over the vessel. It wasn't long before Professor Wainwright's nights became a kaleidoscope of disquiet. The haunting melody, a spectral symphony, played persistently, distorting the edges of reality. Faces of fellow passengers morphed into grotesque masks, their features contorted in rhythm with the haunting tune. The lifeless companion, a silent spectator in the realm of the dead, became the epicenter of an unspoken dread. Those who dared approach the casket spoke of ghostly murmurs and phantom movements, a silent conversation between the living and the departed. At the stroke of midnight, the professor found himself ensnared in a nocturnal dance, a trance-induced pilgrimage through the deserted corridors. The ship's luminescence lent an otherworldly glow to his sleepwalking figure, a ghostly silhouette traversing the ethereal tapestry of the abyssal serenity. The priest, an arbiter of divine games, presided over a fractured chessboard. Ebony and ivory pieces took on a life of their own, moving with preternatural intent. His eyes, illuminated by an unseen fervor, hinted at a communion with forces that transcended the terrestrial plane. Faces materialized in the fog, ephemeral visages of souls long departed. They beckoned with spectral hands, their eyes reflecting tales of sorrow and tragedy. The pervasive cold clung to the ship like a vengeful spirit, seeping into the bones of the living, whispering forgotten maritime laments. As the abyssal serenity sailed further into the nebulous embrace of the fog, the passengers found themselves unwitting participants in a spectral drama, a tapestry of horror woven by unseen hands. The ship became a vessel of transition, navigating not only the physical expanse of the Atlantic, but also the metaphysical boundaries where the living and the spectral converged in a macabre waltz. As the abyssal serenity sailed deeper into the shrouded expanse, Professor Wainwright's nights grew increasingly tormented. The haunting melody, a symphony of the forlorn, echoed through the corridors, seeping into the very fabric of his dreams. Sleep became an unwelcome realm, a landscape where reality and nightmare intertwined. In the moonlit haze, he found himself drawn to the ship's bow, where the enigmatic casket stood as a silent sentinel. Its wooden contours seemed to pulsate with an otherworldly energy, and the professor couldn't shake the feeling that it held secrets, locked away in the embrace of death. The passengers, once animated with the anticipation of reaching distant shores, now wore expressions etched with anxiety. The ship's doctor, Dr. Eleanor Monroe, moved among them with a stoic demeanor. Her eyes, however, betrayed a knowing unease, as if the veil between the corporeal and the ethereal had grown thin. The fog, an ever-present companion, whispered tales of the sea, of souls lost to its fathomless depths. Faces pressed against the portholes, yearning for a glimpse of the unknown that lurked beyond the mist. Each passenger carried their fears, an invisible burden that weighed heavily on the ship's already fraught atmosphere. In the ship's chapel, the priest, Father Ignatius, conducted clandestine rites. Candles flickered in a dance choreographed by unseen hands. The chessboard, forgotten in the corner, bore witness to a cosmic struggle, where each move resonated in the unseen currents of the metaphysical. Professor Wainwright, compelled by forces he couldn't comprehend, ventured into the belly of the ship. The crew's quarters, usually a hive of activity, now exuded an eerie silence. Shadows danced on the walls, casting grotesque silhouettes that seemed to mock the living. The cold, an unrelenting specter, seeped into the professor's bones. His breath materialized in the frigid air, a tangible reminder of the unnatural chill that pervaded the abyssal serenity. He couldn't escape the feeling that the very soul of the ship recoiled at the presence of the deceased passenger. As the clock struck midnight, a collective gasp echoed through the ship. The professor, guided by an unseen hand, found himself standing before the casket. The lid, as if moved by an ethereal force, creaked open. Within the confines of death, the departed passenger stirred. Eyes that should have held the vacant stare of the deceased flickered with a malevolent glow. The haunting melody reached a crescendo, harmonizing with the ship's ominous vibrations. In that unholy communion, the professor glimpsed the transient nature of existence, a truth that transcended the boundaries of life and death. The abyssal serenity, caught between realms, became a vessel for spectral revelations, and the passengers, unwitting voyagers, sailed toward a destiny entwined with the macabre. The next morning dawned with an unnatural pallor. The ship's interiors, once bathed in warm light, now embraced a dimness that seemed to seep from the very walls. Professor Wainwright awoke with a start, his dreams a turbulent sea where reality and nightmare merged. The ship's corridors, a labyrinth of uncertainty, beckoned him with their murmurings. Whispers of a forgotten language echoed, and shadows clung to the walls like malevolent spirits. Dr. Monroe, appearing more fatigued with each passing day, met the professor's gaze with an unspoken acknowledgement, a shared understanding of the encroaching darkness. The crew moved with an orchestrated precision, yet their eyes betrayed a silent plea for release from the invisible shackles that bound them. The priest, Father Ignatius, paced the chapel in fervent prayer, beads slipping through fingers, weathered by the weight of an unspoken burden. Each night, the haunting melody continued its lament. It slithered through the ship's veins, a venomous reminder of a reality that defied comprehension. Professor Wainwright found himself entangled in a nocturnal ballet, sleepwalking through the ship's haunted expanse. The passengers, once strangers, now shared a collective dread. Unspoken glances exchanged in the dining hall spoke of an understanding that transcended language. The ship's log, a chronicle of mundane details, hinted at the creeping insanity that gripped both crew and passengers alike. As the days wore on, the ship sailed deeper into the heart of the unknown. Icebergs, colossal sentinels of an alien realm, loomed in the fog-shrouded distance. Their jagged contours mirrored the fractured psyche of those aboard, a reflection of the disintegrating sanity that clung to the abyssal serenity. Professor Wainwright, guided by an unrelenting force, delved into the ship's archives. Dust-laden manuscripts revealed cryptic symbols, their origins lost in the annals of time. The deceased passenger, a harbinger of spectral discord, left traces of an otherworldly presence that defied rational explanation. One by one, the ship's inhabitants succumbed to the unyielding pressure of the unknown. Crew members vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the echo of their fading footsteps. The priest, driven to the brink of his spiritual convictions, abandoned his post in the chapel. The professor, haunted by the enigma of the deceased passenger, sought solace in the ship's bow. The casket, a conduit to realms unseen, called out with a siren song. Its lid, once closed, now lay ajar, a gateway to the spectral forces that lay beyond. The ship, an unwitting vessel adrift in the sea of the supernatural, hurtled toward a destiny inscribed in the shadows of the abyss. As the abyssal serenity sailed further into the unknown, the line between the living and the dead blurred, and the symphony of the damned reached a fevered pitch. A bone-chilling wind swept across the ship's deck as Professor Wainwright stared into the abyss. The icebergs, colossal and foreboding, seemed to harbor secrets within their frigid embrace. It was as if the very elements conspired to conceal the impending doom that clung to the abyssal serenity. The ship creaked and groaned, its time-worn joints protesting the encroaching malevolence. Crew members, once a stalwart force, now moved with the trepidation of those navigating the threshold between the living and the spectral. The haunting melody, a discordant hymn, echoed through the frozen mist, a lamentation for the souls ensnared in the ship's nautical purgatory. Dr. Monroe, a specter of his former self, approached the professor with an urgency that transcended the spoken word. His eyes, windows to a tortured soul, reflected the weight of knowledge too profound for mortal comprehension. Together, they ventured into the ship's bowels, guided by an invisible hand that beckoned them toward the heart of the enigma. The lower decks, an abyssal realm untouched by the pallid light of day, housed the remnants of forgotten horrors. Cryptic symbols adorned the walls like hieroglyphs of an alien civilization. The scent of decay mingled with the acrid tang of ancient ink, and the air itself seemed to pulse with an unholy resonance. As they approached the chamber that cradled the deceased passenger, a sepulchral silence settled over the ship. The lid of the casket, once ajar, now lay fully open, a portal to dimensions beyond the veil of mortal perception. The spectral presence, a fusion of shadow and sorrow, materialized before them. In that unhallowed chamber, the professor and Dr. Monroe bore witness to the tragic tale of the deceased. A love, profound and consuming, shattered by the ravages of war. A returning soldier, his body maimed and his mind fractured, sought solace in the embrace of a love that time had rendered unrecognizable. The frozen mist outside mirrored the icy tendrils that coiled around the hearts of the ill-fated couple. Their love, a beacon of hope in the aftermath of war, metamorphosed into a tragedy etched in the annals of the ethereal. The deceased passenger, caught in the throes of despair, became a vessel for the anguish that pervaded the ship. As the professor and Dr. Monroe unraveled the spectral tapestry, a realization gripped them, a revelation that transcended the boundaries of mortality. The ship, an inadvertent relic of cosmic malevolence, sailed upon a sea of souls ensnared by the inexorable currents of fate. the haunting melody reached a crescendo, its dissonant chords resonating with the cries of those lost to the abyss. The abyssal serenity, suspended between the living and the dead, hurtled toward an inevitable collision with the shadows that lurked in the heart of the frozen mist. In the eerie stillness that followed, the ship's hull groaned with the weight of its haunted legacy. The professor and Dr. Monroe, burdened by the knowledge they had unearthed, braced themselves for the tempest that awaited them in the chapters yet to unfold. As the abyssal serenity sailed deeper into the heart of the Arctic, the professor and Dr. Monroe found themselves ensnared in a web of apparitions. Ghostly figures, clad in tattered remnants of military uniforms, patrolled the dimly lit corridors. Each phantom bore the scars of a war that transcended the mortal realm, a conflict eternally waged in the hallowed chambers of the ship. The ship's once grand library, a repository of knowledge now tainted by the ethereal, beckoned the duo. Books, suspended in a state of spectral suspension, whispered tales of agony and despair. The professor, compelled by a force beyond reason, traced his fingers across the spines of volumes that pulsed with the residual energy of tormented souls. Amidst the disquieting silence, the haunting melody manifested anew. Its notes, a siren's lament, echoed through the desolate corridors, guiding the professor and Dr. Monroe toward a revelation that lurked at the nexus of forbidden knowledge. In a hidden chamber, veiled by the frigid embrace of solitude, they discovered a collection of letters, a testament to a love unbound by the shackles of time. The correspondence bore witness to the agony of separation, the yearning for a reunion that fate had callously denied. As they delved into the missives, the specters around them seemed to stir with a disquieting anticipation. The professor's breath hung in the frozen air as he deciphered the final entry, a letter penned by a soul on the precipice of despair. The ink, imbued with spectral energy, conveyed the tormented confession of a lover left adrift in the void. The departed soldier, grappling with the shadows that trailed him from the battlefield, sought solace in the forbidden embrace of an otherworldly force. Love, once a bastion of warmth, metamorphosed into an all-consuming darkness. In a paroxysm of revelation, the ship quivered as if recoiling from the malevolence that clung to the pages. The haunting melody, now an anguished dirge, reached a crescendo that reverberated through the ship's time-worn frame. The professor and Dr. Monroe, their minds entwined with the spectral narrative, beheld a vision, a tableau of tragedy etched into the very fabric of the abyssal serenity. The doomed lovers, locked in a spectral embrace, transcended the boundaries of the corporeal and dissipated into the icy mist that cloaked the ship. As the echoes of despair subsided, the ship sailed on, a vessel ensnared in a perpetual dance with the forces that lurked beyond the veil of mortality. The professor and Dr. Monroe, burdened by the weight of revelations, descended further into the abyss, their journey fraught with the promise of horrors yet unveiled. The relentless Arctic night enveloped the abyssal serenity, casting shadows that danced upon its frozen hull. Professor Harrington, haunted by the revelations of the letters, descended into the belly of the ship, where the echoes of despair were woven into the very fabric of its existence. In the cargo hold, he stumbled upon an antique phonograph, its needle poised above a vinyl record that bore an eerie resemblance to the haunting melody that had pursued him since the ship's departure. professor hesitated, a sense of foreboding whispering through the icy air. As the needle descended, a haunting symphony filled the chamber. The ghostly apparitions, roused by the melancholic strains, congregated in a spectral congregation. Their ethereal dance, a macabre ballet, unfolded in the frigid darkness. Professor Harrington, a reluctant spectator to this spectral masquerade, felt the weight of unseen eyes upon him. Dr. Monroe, guided by an intuition born of her medical expertise, traversed the labyrinthine corridors to join the professor. Together, they witnessed a manifestation, a convergence of the ship's spectral denizens. Faces etched with the eternally frozen expressions of tragedy turned toward the intruders, their eyes gleaming with a spectral intensity. The professor, grappling with the ethereal forces that bound him, realized that the answers to the mysteries that enshrouded the abyssal serenity lay in a confrontation with the very entities that sailed within its spectral confines. Dr. Monroe, armed with the stoicism of a seasoned physician, stood by his side as the ship's wraiths closed in. A malevolent force, the spectral embodiment of the ill-fated lovers' tragic union, materialized before them. Its form, a grotesque amalgamation of love and despair, emanated a palpable malevolence. The professor, driven by a surge of otherworldly insight, understood that the ship itself yearned for release from the shackles of a haunting past and the purgatory of perpetual night. In a desperate bid to sever the spectral ties that bound the ship to its tragic history, Professor Harrington and Dr. Monroe channeled their collective willpower. The air crackled with a supernatural energy as the professor recited an incantation, a whispered plea for salvation that echoed through the spectral void. The ship, caught in the throes of metaphysical turbulence, quivered as if caught between dimensions. The ghostly apparitions, suspended in their eternal dance, wavered in uncertainty. The haunting melody, now a requiem for the tormented souls trapped within the vessel, intensified. As the crescendo reached its zenith, the abyssal serenity underwent a spectral metamorphosis. The icebergs that encased it seemed to recoil, and the ship, bathed in an ethereal glow, sailed into a shimmering portal, a gateway to an uncertain fate. The professor and Dr. Monroe, their ordeal culminating in an otherworldly climax, stood on the ship's deck as it vanished into the luminous embrace of the unknown. The haunting melody, now a fading whisper, lingered in the Arctic winds. Yet, as the echoes of despair dissipated into the polar night, the professor and Dr. Monroe remained. The aftermath of their supernatural encounter left an indelible mark, a shared secret buried within the recesses of their consciousness. The professor, burdened by the weight of revelations, and Dr. Monroe, forever changed by the communion with the spectral unknown, turned toward the horizon. The Arctic expanse, a canvas of endless possibility, stretched before them, a tableau of desolation and beauty that mirrored the dichotomy of their harrowing journey. As they gazed into the polar abyss, the professor and Dr. Monroe, united by the transcendence of mortal boundaries, confronted the spectral enigma that lingered in the ever-present shadows of the abyssal serenity. The ship, now a phantom vessel lost in the fabric of time, sailed into the annals of maritime lore, a testament to the enduring power of love and the inexorable pull of the metaphysical currents that bound souls to the ephemeral tapestry of existence.
never